What's happening, folks? Mr. Arouche here, and today we're talking about is the scientific method. And essentially what the scientific method is, it's a set of steps that scientists or anybody really can follow in order to identify and eventually solve problems to find truth or solutions. So first, why is the scientific method important? Well, number one, it allows us to solve problems like I had said. Believe it or not, even though you may not think so, we've all used the scientific method in order to solve something in our everyday life, and we'll talk more about that in class. So the steps of the scientific method are important because it allows us to collect data that's not biased. What that means, not biased, is that it's not influenced by our personal interest or outside factors. And the reason why that's important is to get unbiased information or unbiased data is it allows us to seek truth. It allows us to find out what's really happening in natural phenomenon, meaning things that happen in nature, okay? And lastly, in the scientific method, experiments have to be repeatable so that other people could validate or challenge your results. So if you do an experiment and it's impossible for someone else to replicate that experiment to see if they could get the same results, then it's not a good experiment, okay? So experiments have to be repeatable so that way others can validate it or challenge the results that you get, okay? So we're going to go over the scientific method steps, and right now it's just going to be a big picture of the scientific method, and over the next few days we're going to go over each section a little more in depth so you get a better understanding. So today is just the big picture, okay? Now, when I have you guys take notes for homework, I want you guys to write the title. Well, first of all, any slide that has this pencil, I want you guys to write everything down on this slide that has the pencil, okay? So first, go ahead and jot down the title, the scientific method, and these are the notes that I want you to put. First, the scientific method starts off with an observation. An observation uses our senses to gather information. So it could be we see something, we smell something, we hear something, anything that uses one of our five senses, okay? That's how we make an observation. After we make an observation, we're going to use that information to ask a question. So let me give you this example. Let's say I go start my car in the morning, and when I put the key in the ignition, the first thing I see is the check engine light comes on. That's an observation. When I turn the car on, I might hear a rattling noise. That's another, I'm using another one of my senses to gather data for an observation. I'm going to use that information to later ask a question, and my question may be, what's wrong with my car? Why is this check engine light on? Why is it making this sound? The next thing that I could do is do research, because after I make this observation and ask this question, I should be able to find some other information on it, okay? So when you do research, you want to make sure you're using what's called a credible source. When you're trying to look for information on a topic, you want to make sure it's by somebody that knows what they're talking about, and it's not some random person from Facebook, okay? You want to make sure that you're talking, in this case of my car, I'd want to make sure that I'm talking to a mechanic, maybe somebody who's worked on cars prior. Go to a valid website, maybe a website from AutoZone or something like that, okay? After I do my research, I'm going to create what's called a hypothesis. And what that is, it's a testable prediction, okay? Usually the hypothesis is in an if-then format. So let me give you an example. Let's say I do some research and I think that it's my fan belt that has the check engine light and what's creating the rattling noise. I'm going to make a hypothesis that says if I fix my fan belt, okay, I use the word if I fix the fan belt, then my car will be fixed. Okay? The next thing that I do is I actually followed through with the experiment. I actually replaced the fan belt. And typically in a real experiment, we're going to go into these areas more, but a good experiment should have constants, a control group, experimental group, independent variable, and dependent variable. I want you guys to just write those down for now. We're going to go over and what those mean later on, okay, at another time. But step 5 is to actually have an experiment. Step 6 is I'm actually going to collect data. So after I do my experiment, I'm going to gather data from that, and I'm going to organize that. Usually that can be in the form of data tables or just jotting information down, okay? Step 7 is I organize and analyze the data. Usually in science what this looks like is visuals or charts, okay? So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this information that I collected and I'm organizing that into a visual representation, something that's easy to see, and graphs, pie charts, things like that, they work really well for visual representations of data, okay? The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to form a conclusion. So this visual representation will help me determine, was that the problem of my car? Was it my fan belt? Or was there another issue, okay? If the data that I gathered, if my conclusion and the data supports my hypothesis, if I was correct, then I'm completely done. However, if the data doesn't support my conclusion, then I need to go back and change my hypothesis. Maybe it wasn't my fan belt. Maybe it was something else. Go back, create another if-then statement, and then test that. Okay, and then hopefully that data would support my hypothesis. Okay, that is it for today, folks. That was the scientific method, and I'll catch you guys next time.